I'm the Director of Community here at Fictiv. I'm really excited to have you. For those of you that don't know what Fictiv is, and have not been here before, we're a hardware development platform for engineers and designers. We do 3D printed parts in 24 hours, and we provide a whole bunch of tools and resources for people to build better hardware and learn how to build hardware products. So part of that process is doing events just like these and meeting with incredible founders and members of the community and hearing their stories and sharing that with you. So we're going to do a bit of a panel and talk about what some of the challenges are and some of the opportunities of how do you get a product to market. So there's all of this movement towards pre-orders. There's been a rise in crowdfunding. And yet, retailers are still huge, and getting things to some of the big boxes like Target and Walmart is still a big part of the process. So everybody on this panel has been through this process in one way or another. And so before we start, I'd love if everyone could just go down and give a brief introduction of themselves and what they're working on, and then we'll get started. Sean, you want to start?
With me. So I work for a company called Eero. I bought a sample. Oh, we make a piece of Wi-Fi equipment. You put one of these throughout your home. You can customize it to your house, up to 10. One of them is hardwired into your cable modem. The others connect wirelessly, and it forms a mesh network that delivers a fast, stable Wi-Fi connection to every room. Funny thing is, our photographers for our website actually used to rent space in this building, so I've actually been here a lot, and a lot of the product photography on our website was shot right here, which is pretty fun.
And I'm Zach Supalla, CEO of Particle. We're an Internet of Things platform, and we make like a web infrastructure for Internet of Things. So if you're deploying a product, a whole back-end service to connect and manage those devices. And we make hardware development kits called the Photon and the Electron, and originally the Spark Core, that are sort of Arduino-y kind of things. You can build a connected product around and connect to the internet. So, and we started with a couple Kickstarter campaigns and sort of pre-order type things.
Hello, I'm Kate Whitcomb. My background that's kind of relevant to this topic is I was a buyer at Target for 3 years in various categories. I've spent over $500 million of Target's money on products, which was fun. And now I run a retail sales and distribution accelerator for HAX Accelerator, which is the world's largest and first hardware accelerator based in Shenzhen, but now in San Francisco for our sales and distribution part. So work a lot with hardware startups looking to figure out this whole equation.
My name is Eric T. I'm co-founder and CEO of Bloom Technologies. I also brought show and tell here. So Bloom, we work in the digital health space, developing products for expecting moms. So we combine wearable devices with data analytics with the goal of both reassuring expecting parents, taking the guesswork out of pregnancy and providing feedback on her pregnancy, both her health and the health of her baby, but also trying to provide doctors with better information to help them earlier predict and manage pregnancy complications. So our first product is a little wearable sensor. There's a reusable part and disposable patch. It tracks important health information of the mom and the baby throughout her pregnancy. And this includes some pregnancy-specific information no one is tracking today, such as fetal movement, fetal heart rate, and contractions. And so the grand vision of the company is ultimately to crowdsource the largest and most comprehensive data set around prenatal health, and to use this to start tackling some of the biggest problems in obstetrics, such as preterm birth.
Thanks. So all of you have done pre-orders on your platform or your products in one way or another. Talk to me and talk to the audience about why you chose pre-orders, why you made that decision, and why you used the platform that you did.
So in our case, we had a young founding team, first-time founders, and unlike say a Nest, we were not going to be able to go out and raise the R&D dollars that we needed. So pre-order was a perfect way to get product market fit, take it to investors, and raise more money so that we could develop the product we wanted. We don't talk about that a lot publicly. The average consumer, I don't think really gets that. but yeah, I mean, for us, that was the reason.
So we've done 4 pre-order campaigns, which I will quickly run through. The first one was an unsuccessful campaign for a product called the Spark Socket, a connected lighting product in late 2012. Goal of $250,000. We made $125,000, which means we made 0. And that product continues to not exist. The second one was for the Spark Core, which was a hardware development kit in May 2013 with a $10,000 goal to raise almost $600,000. That one exists. The third was a off Kickstarter we did our own pre-order campaign for our second generation dev kit, the Photon. We pre-sold 25,000 units. I don't actually know how many dollars that is. And then we did a third Kickstarter campaign for a dev kit called the Electron, which we also raised about $600,000 for. So we do a lot of crowdfunding. And the reason is, for us, it's about building community. So the reason that we make hardware development kits is to make it easier for people to build prototypes and then get those things up and running. And one of the things that's really valuable about prototyping is having a community. You don't want to build something in an empty room. You want other people who are there also working through the same challenges as you, and you can go to the forums and ask for their help. And it works really well if you have 5,000 or 10,000 people who all get their dev kits at exactly the same time, that they can be there to support each other. And what's amazing is that community persists after the product ships. So the fact that we have tens of thousands of developers building stuff on our platform all comes from those initial kind of moments of crowdfunding.
Sure. Double here. So we started doing pre-sales, I guess you could call it, through our website. We didn't do any, crowdfunding for one particular reason, and that's because pregnant women aren't pregnant forever. So we had a particular challenge that made proving out our market particularly difficult. You could always kind of fake sell things, which of course only gets you so far. Once we actually had a product that we could start shipping, even in its beta form, we made the conscious decision to charge for that. I felt that if you start giving things away for free, that they ascribe no value to it, and you're not going to really learn. So we actually started renting our product because we only had 15 of them. So we didn't have hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands. We had 15 as our first order, so we started just to start renting them because, again, women aren't pregnant forever, so once they had the baby, I didn't want the device just sitting around there and us not learning. So we started renting, and actually this model of rental or subscription started resonating with people. So now we've had over 1,300 women sign up. We've helped deliver over 100 now, healthy moms and healthy babies, and we're gearing up for a larger market launch right now.
Zach, to your point, you've used crowdfunding platforms and then you've done it on your own site and then you went back to Kickstarter. Talk about that decision. Why did you go back to Kickstarter after using your own site?
So it was, it's a really good question. We were really nervous. So our first product was $39, our second one was $19. Kickstarter, when you look at the page, you really only see one number, which is the dollars raised. And we were really nervous about the fact that in order to match the number of dollars raised from the first campaign, we'd have to double our sales. And so we were concerned that even a success would look from the outside like a sort of downwards trajectory. And we didn't want to have that kind of that appearance of the business. So our second product we did on a pre-order, that was sort of the main reason is we were really concerned about that risk. Now we ended up selling, we might have sold enough to get to the same number. We probably would have ended up pretty close. But then what we learned is we didn't get quite the same level of community and engagement that we got with Kickstarter. So then we came back and we had a product that was different enough that we weren't concerned as much about the first two were really like version 1, version 2. So it was more concerning. We then had another product that was more different. It was also more expensive, so the risk went away. And we ended up raising just a little bit more than the first campaign. So we felt like the risk was not as bad and that we really wanted to build that community that we got off Kickstarter.
Kate, I'd love to start with you on the next one and feel free to chip in, but what, in your experience, and we've seen a lot of hardware companies come through, what products are good for pre-order campaigns and crowdfunding campaigns and which ones aren't?
So there's a lot of potential answers to that question. I would say if you think of Kickstarter campaigns, if you're taking it all the way to what a customer is eventually going to buy, a Kickstarter campaign is part of that signal process, right? So if you're thinking of it from a retailer buying perspective, so the eventual decision maker who's going to decide to buy thousands of units of your products, that first crowdfunding step is the first piece of evidence they have as to whether or not your product is successful or not. So for a company like Bloom, if they had done a crowdfunding campaign and inevitably not been successful because a woman's not pregnant forever, that would have been a signal that people didn't necessarily see the match to the market, even though it's a completely incorrect signal. So if you are in an area of hardware where there's been a lot of evidence of success, like drones, for example, something that's really easy to understand and cool, and a community exists and people will rally around it, then by all means. But the best thing about B2C products, and that's where I kind of specialize, is that all of us can make a vote. Consumers are consumers, and all of us can make really good opinions on whether or not you buy something. And that's kind of as good as any market evidence gets. So if you see a product and you think, I would buy this, that's pretty good evidence that maybe it'll sell to other people too. So I would say if you feel like you are confident that the product has good market fit and people will buy it and they buy it on the shelf somewhere too, then it's a good idea. If not, you might have to be a little bit more creative with how you do that.
So you do you have something to add to that?
Okay, I was going to ask you a question. Can I ask a question? It seems like since you are working for an investor now as well, I'm curious because a lot of investors now say that they don't believe crowdfunding really equates to product market fit,
Right.
Or at least they don't ascribe as much value to it as they used to.
Right.
So how do you reconcile the fact that that is a signal, but it's not enough? Like, how do you go beyond that then?
That's a really, really good question. It's kind of a loaded question because it's all part of an equation, right? If you have a crowdfunding campaign and then you've done nothing else as a company, that's really transparent. I see a lot of cases where hardware companies have had a successful campaign and then they just ride the coattails of that for months and months and then wonder why they fall off the bridge of death after crowdfunding before hitting distribution or getting POs from retailers or potential partners. So I would say that crowdfunding is not a signal, but if it goes well, it's just a positive thing. So it's a win-win overall. As a buyer, just to give a little bit of context, if I see a new product cross my desk, so if I was at Target and saw a new product cross my desk, I would just Google it because that's what humans do, right? You just put it in Google and you're like, what is this? And then whatever comes up is the evidence I've got first and what I will read. A lot of the times what comes up first is Amazon. Oftentimes what comes up after that is a crowdfunding page. So those are the things that are out there in the wild that you can't control, and those are the things that buyers see, and those are the people that are making decisions about thousands and thousands of units. If it goes well, then it's all part of the positive story,
Okay.
which is probably a frustrating answer.
So to the point you mentioned Amazon, Sean, you were doing orders on your site for Eero, and you're also doing Amazon. Talk about the process of why you made that decision and why you chose that platform specifically for Eero.
Yeah, I wish it was something really thought out. It wasn't. So Amazon has a program called Launchpad. I'm sure many people here are familiar with it. They were launching last summer. We had been put in touch with Amazon, and they wanted us to be part of the program as they launched it. We didn't quite hit that. We hit a few weeks later. Yeah, it wasn't sort of rocket science. Amazon's great. Launchpad's been great. They give you kind of everything they can give you in terms of free marketing support when your product finally does ship, or in our case, finally does ship. Some people go in with the product ready to ship. Yeah, I think additional retailers is much more complicated, but that one was sort of obvious.
To everyone, at what point do you start thinking, you've done your crowdfunding, you've done your pre-orders on your site, at what point do you start thinking about retailers, about distribution beyond those platforms?
I guess I'll go. So we haven't started shipping in mass yet. I guess the way that we think about it though is that with hardware, I guess with all products, inevitably a lot more is going to go wrong than what you think. And so our process to launch is essentially right now, after we get out of beta, to do a soft launch. And since we have more of our kind of subscription type models, to go from tens of monthly active users up to hundreds of monthly active users, and to really use that to stress test our fulfillment and customer support capabilities, and also build really great user stories that we could use for the larger launch. We're still thinking that even upon market launch, we're probably going to stay strictly e-commerce through our website, because specifically with moms, they're a highly networked group, and they will either love you and sing your praises, or they'll just demolish you and you'll be crushed forever. So we want to make sure that upon launch, God forbid anything goes wrong, we know how to get hold of those people right away, and they didn't come from some other retail channel. We need to try to figure out who they are or where they're coming from. So we'll probably end up doing strictly through our website initially, and then expand into Amazon, because as has already been pointed out, I think a lot of people, at least I do, anytime you hear about a product, you're going to search for it and you're going to look for the reviews, and the first place you're going to probably go for reviews is Amazon. And so I think that's a lot of places where people go to do research. I know moms go to do research there. And so really positive Amazon reviews can really help drive and reinforce that you do have a quality product. And so we started thinking about rolling out into other retail channels, specifically online. We'll probably start thinking about that anywhere between 4 to 6 months after a product launch, when we know we have some firm grounding to actually expand out to other places.
Eric, can you talk really quickly about, we were talking earlier about the story of why you chose subscription for your pre-orders? I think it's a really interesting story.
Yeah, so I kind of alluded to it a little bit. So we had limited supply, right? We had a first production run, very small, and I wanted to continue to do product testing, and so after the woman delivered her baby, I didn't want the product just sitting there. So we decided to do a weekly rental. And so we started shipping to women. They pay $29 a week. They get the sensor, the disposable patches they need. And after they deliver the baby, they can just return the sensor to us, and then we refurb and send it out to the next person. And through our customer research, we found that a lot of moms organically were commenting on how they liked the fact that we were renting it to them, that it felt like it wasn't wasteful because they're not going to be pregnant forever. And so we kind of stumbled upon it, and when we started really digging in with other users moving forward about whether or not they'd want to buy it or rent it, 90% said, no, I'd like to rent it, because then, again, when I'm done, I could just return it to you. So we kind of stumbled upon it, and the nice thing is what we're building out right now is this referral mechanism. And so after you're done using the product, you can return it to us. Like, there's just a little prepaid envelope, you just stick it back in, or you could pass it on to another mom. And because there's still these disposable components, it's not like there's a secondary market that is just going to exist outside of us. You always need this to use the product, because this has, well, this is where that helps the sensor attach, and it has the electrodes on the back to measure the biopotential. So it kind of became this, I don't know, this interesting model that a lot of people are trying to go towards, that we kind of stumbled upon, and kind of fits just at least with our market, because again, people don't need it for the rest of their lives. They need it for the time that they're pregnant.
So what have been some of your biggest learnings, this is for everybody, from doing pre-orders, whether on your platform or crowdfunding?
So I think a big thing for me, and this is especially true of Kickstarter, having now done different kinds of pre-order, is that pre-order customers are extremely passionate about you and your product. They, especially if they're coming on a platform like Kickstarter, they feel like they're founders. They feel like they're participating in the project. They feel like they are members of the team. They really like to see you. They care a lot about the interactions with the people. They like videos and pictures of like people holding prototypes and things like that. They expect to be treated quite well. They have high expectations for you because they feel like they're funding you, almost like investors. And that can sound a little daunting, but what you realize is it's a sort of double-edged sword. It can be amazing, right? Like if you treat them the way they expect to be treated, they become incredible advocates. They'll go sing your praises. They will carry you for years. It's amazing what a well sort of manicured community can produce for a company. It's absolutely incredible. If you don't treat them to their expectations, they get mad, and you see a lot of like angry mobs of lawsuits, and like people who clearly they failed to deliver on their Kickstarter campaign, and these are people who are clearly like down and out, right? Like they've lost everything. they've lost their shirts trying to like get this product out, and then their customers come and sue them. And it's just like, seriously. So you gotta watch out for that, but all you need to do is just treat them with respect, right? Those experiences happen when you fail to ship or you're late or something and you're embarrassed, and so you don't share, you try and hide and obscure the mistakes that you've made, and then they get worse and worse, and that's like the vicious cycle that kills you. So if you stay on top of that and you're open and transparent when things are good, when things are bad, they will reward you endlessly for that.
Actually, adding on to that from a retailer perspective, it's amazing sometimes, even from the perspective of being a target buyer, how often you don't hear about problems until they're too late with product. And even getting a call saying we're not going to ship to 1,800 stores and you're going to have empty shelves for 2 weeks. If you knew about that as soon as the company knew about it, you feel like you're in the loop. And then you can become incredibly forgiving. Whereas if it's after that, you're just irate and you're like, can we call some lawyers to deal with this? This is horrible. And you just get really mad and irrationally angry. But as soon as you know ahead of time, you feel like you're collaborating. You can help. You kind of troubleshoot it together, which is same with Kickstarter.
So how do you maintain that same level of transparency and communication if you're doing pre-orders or orders on your platform? I'm asking tough questions.
So for us, we did our own platform. We did Eero.com, and we probably made the mistake of not communicating enough early on. Sort of an email went out with an update, I don't know, every 8 weeks, but not with the consistency of 8 weeks. And when we went to a monthly update, things got a lot better. People were a lot happier. Even though we were delayed, people were a lot happier, so that was interesting. I don't know if I have anything else to add on that front. Sometimes having it come from the CEO can make a big difference. Nick, who is our CEO, would even get into Zendesk and answer tickets, and that was not super scalable, but little moments of kind of awesomeness for whoever's on the receiving end of that.
The one thing that it's hard, I think, especially when you're a small company, because there's so much going on that obviously the customer is important, but there's so much going on that you're like, okay, well, I can't communicate all the time to the customer because I have all this other stuff I need to do. And so we have my poor colleague Molly is in charge of so much in terms of like testing with users and communicating and managing all these things, and you don't really have any good tools internally set up. And so I think it's just challenging, but the one thing that we found, which is just, you believe that people want your product and need your product, but until you actually have these folks that don't get it in time and are irate that you didn't ship to them, and we don't even charge you until we ship it to you. So it's not like they've even paid anything, right? We have their credit card information. We haven't even charged them anything. And the women that we didn't communicate enough to, that we just missed their due date, some of these women were really, really upset and angry. And even worse, it's like your mom said, "I'm so disappointed." Oh, it kills us. So I agree. I think somehow overly communicating is better, and some sort of cadence of communicating also lets them know that they could expect something from you. And we're, to be honest, we're still working it out and trying to put on the internal procedures. But yeah, it's hard. I don't know. I think you just have to define as a task, like, cool, like these people that have ordered, we need to get back to them at some sort of regularity, and then that's you just make sure it happens, like other things that are critical deadlines.
So when we think about retail, I notice a lot of people don't realize how vast of a term that is. Retail can mean a variety of things. Kate, I know you have a wealth of experience here, kind of giving an overview of what some of the options are, and then I'm curious from the rest of the panels of why you chose the channels that you did.
I could talk for like 3 hours on this. If anybody wants to talk to me later, I'll just talk for the rest of the evening. But so there's a lot of things that might be familiar to most people, but retail comes in a lot of shapes and sizes, from the worst to the best. So I'll start with the worst. The worst is an online deal site that isn't going to buy anything, right? So that's the worst. So if you get an email from someone who wants you to hold units to drop ship to their customers, but they're not going to buy it until the deal closes. That's the worst, right? The best is a PO with no terms, where you're getting an order from a retail buyer for thousands of units and there's no contingencies on that. Like, if this doesn't sell to expectations, you have to ship it all back or something along those lines. Most retailers fall somewhere in between that, which will be kind of a regular wholesale purchase model with some contingencies. Big box retailers tend to buy hardware product, especially if it's B2C product, obviously, and they'll have some kind of agreement where if there's product returned, you'll pay for those returns, you'll pay for the cost of that return. If it really doesn't sell to expectations, you might negotiate a deal to send the product back. But again, it's all a negotiation, so if you bring the right people onto your team, they'll help you through that part. But a typical scenario is kind of the last one I described. I would say someone with great terms who tends to be pretty easy to work with for most startups is Amazon. They tend to have, they give a lot of margin back to makers, and they tend to have pretty automated systems, so it's easy to upload things. But I'll say from Amazon's perspective, they basically operate one store. So if you think of Amazon as a single portal, whereas brick and mortar retailers operate thousands of stores and sell 93% of product in the market. So it just depends on the market size that you're looking for. A quick plug for brick and mortar retail, they sell a lot of units, but they'll also suck up a lot of your time. So the key there is really partnerships and finding the right people to help you with the selling process.
So how do you start those conversations? How do you even begin? That's a lot to consider, and that's a lot of information. How do you start that process?
Well, I'll say Eero must have done something right early in the process, and early being the key word there, because I remember hearing of Eero 6 months ago from a target buyer just in conversation casually, in terms of something they were excited about and something they were looking forward to learning more about. And that's the key, right, is that brand building so that you create demand. Because if you can create demand, all of a sudden you have the upper hand in that negotiation and that sale to the buyer. And the buyer is the person who holds all of that power. And if they've heard of you already, or if they've read about you on TechCrunch, or they saw you at CES, or they saw your record-breaking crowdfunding campaign, all of a sudden they're kind of a fan. And when you have a fan and you treat that fan well, it's going to end really, really well for everybody. So it's essentially creating that market early so that you've got that demand kind of in the bag. And that is through old school stuff like good content marketing, paid marketing, email marketing, a good website, a Twitter account, things that just aren't rocket science, but they're really hard, they're really easy to ignore when you're super busy with everything else. So as you describe this person on your team who's answering all these emails, I'm wondering if she's also monitoring like your social accounts.
Oh yeah, that's her responsibility. Yes, that actually is hers.
Right, but that demand building, it pays off tenfold. It's like setting up a really good CRM for a startup. If you do it early enough, it's going to pay off 100 times over when that demand just exists and you go into a conversation and it's a warm conversation instead of a cold conversation.
I'm hearing a theme of early and often across all of these topics here. I think we've got time for one more question across the panelists, and we'll open it up for a Q&A here. But we talked about learnings, but if you had one piece of advice to give to startup founders and engineers and designers in this room that are building hardware products and wanting to bring it to market, what would that be?
Well, I'll build on what you were saying. So this is specific to retailers. I think the best thing that we have done to date when it comes to retailers is we fly up, whether it's to Seattle or wherever else we're going. I don't know how many times I've been to Seattle in the last year, a lot. And so have other members of the team. So there is this sort of like element of you can't do it from afar, you need to build a relationship, even with someone as progressive as Amazon. And I think it's even truer of older school brick and mortar retailers. So yeah, just don't neglect that. Just like don't neglect communications either. They're easier to overlook, but super important, and they build over time. So the payoff is long term.
So I think what's surprising about hardware startups before you get into, or that you don't realize before you get into it, is the number of things you have to get right is kind of extraordinary. Like, you can't mess up anything. You have to get like 50 things right. And it's everything from the product and the packaging and the injection molding and the electronics and the software and the relationship between the app, the iOS app, the Android app, the relationship with your customers, the relationship with your partners. Like, there's so many things you have to write. You can't screw anything up. Recognizing that, it would behoove you to try something smaller and simpler to start, right? Because the only way you can manage it is by either having you either have to have an unbelievable team of experts, or a massive team, or a product that's simple enough that the challenges you're taking on aren't so crazy that you couldn't actually pull it off. So you got to pick one of those paths. If you think you're gonna deliver a complex product perfectly, grow to massive scale with a team of 3 people who've never done it before, it's probably not true. But you can make some changes. You can pick one of those paths. You just have to, realize what you're up against. There's a lot of challenges. If you get through the challenges, you get an open field, because it is there aren't that many other companies that can pull it off. So, but you got to work to get there.
And I'll say, piggybacking off of that, hardware is really, really hard because there's so many hard things about it, and sometimes they all come together, and then you have a product that people actually want. But that being said, the biggest issue I see with hardware startups is the difficulty in pivoting from being really, really good at all the stuff that Zach just described to building a scalable business and turning to selling and marketing, because that pivot, the bridge of death as we all know it, is a total change in core competencies and skill sets. And that's where it's a really good time to phone a friend and not try to do it yourself. Just because you've been able to set up a manufacturing pipeline in China and you've been able to build this amazing thing and have all these excited users doesn't mean that you are the best person to go sell to a retailer, or the best person to fly to distributor meetings all over the country, or come up with that key catchphrase on Facebook that's going to make people click through enough times to make the money you're spending worth it. So find the people who are experts at that and bring them in and give them a lot of responsibility, and just trust that they're going to do it better than you probably can, and they will use their time better, because you've just got better things to deal with. So take good partners, phone a friend.
I agree wholeheartedly with both of those comments. I think those are totally true. And it's also hard when you have so many ideas and you just don't have the time or the resources to get to everything. And it's just right there in front of your grasp. You have to slap your hand away and say, don't do that. I think the one thing that I've realized a little bit late in the game, but I kind of figured out now, is that one of the most important things I think about starting your company, regardless of what space, is the narrative. What's your story? Because that's what gets people excited. I mean, people don't get excited about a specific product. They get excited about what this product means to them and the greater purpose behind all of it. And if you have a very compelling story, it's much easier to get people to come around you and to want to support you. And that's both for customers, that's for investors, that's for partners. It's across the board. And I think it's sometimes hard because you, as a founder or a builder, you're living it and you get it. But unless you could actually communicate that in a very clear and compelling way, other people just don't get it. And you might say these people are stupid, which I've said multiple times, and there's a lot of stupid people out there. But in the end, it's up to you to actually tell that story to people. And so really nailing it down, distilling it to its pure essence is I really think the key, especially at early stage, because you don't have anything other than your story. You may have some resume, but that's all you have is your story. So really making sure that resonates with people and it connects with them, I think, is super important.
Guys, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you guys. Hopefully these guys will stick around a little bit and mingle with you guys. Please, if there's food left over, grab some food, grab some drinks, and we look forward to seeing you guys next time. Thanks so much.
Cheers.